Welcome to Alien Whisper, where sizzling hot alien women and emotional sci-fi alien stories await you. If you enjoy thrilling adventures between humans and extraterrestrial beings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below the video. Now, let's dive into the story. The ground beneath Dr. Alex Thorne's boots shattered like glass, a deafening crack splitting the silence of Zirian 4's ancient ruins. 1 second, he was tracing glyphs on a glowing obsidian wall. The next, he was plummeting into darkness, a scream tearing from his throat as the air rushed past. He hit the bottom hard, pain exploding in his leg, and the world spun. A jagged pit, 20 feet deep, its walls slick and unforgiving. His flashlight flickered, casting wild shadows across alien carvings that pulsed with faint blue light. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, hot and sticky, as he fumbled for his comms unit. Dead, smashed in the fall. Alone on this frozen hellhole of a planet, Alex cursed his luck. Something moved above, a shadow against the dim sky. Friend or foe? He gripped his knife, heart pounding, ready for anything. This wasn't how he'd pictured his big discovery. Alex, a rugged 38-year-old archaeologist with a knack for unearthing the past, had come to Zirian for chasing rumors of a lost civilization. Earth's universities laughed him off, called it a fool's errand, but he'd staked everything on this expedition: his savings, his reputation, his pride. The planet was a desolate rock, orbiting a dying star, its surface a maze of ice and stone littered with ruins older than humanity itself. He'd landed solo 3 days ago, his shuttle parked a mile off, stocked with enough gear to last a month. The ruins called to him, towering spires and buried chambers, whispering secrets in a language no one alive could read. If he could crack their code, he'd rewrite history. But now, trapped in this damn hole, history might bury him instead. Alex shifted, wincing as his twisted ankle throbbed. He was no stranger to danger. Years digging through war zones and collapsed tombs had toughened him up, but this felt different. The air down here was thick, heavy with a metallic tang, and the walls seemed to hum, vibrating under his fingertips. He'd been studying a panel of symbols when the floor gave way, a trap set by whoever built this place millennia ago. Smart bastards, he thought, wiping blood from his eye. The glyphs had been unlike anything he'd seen, sharp angles and curves, glowing like they were alive. He'd snapped photos, sketched them in his notebook, convinced they held the key to something big. Now, that notebook lay beside him, pages smudged with dirt and sweat. He scanned the pit again, looking for a way out. The walls were smooth as polished steel, no handholds, no cracks. Climbing was out of the question with his busted leg. He tried shouting, his voice echoing back in a hollow roar, but the only answer was silence, until that shadow flickered overhead. Alex froze, squinting up at the faint light filtering through the hole. It moved again, deliberate, not some trick of the wind. "Hey!" he yelled, his deep voice rough from days of solitude. "Down here. I need help." No response, just the soft crunch of boots on stone. His hand tightened on the knife, a 6-inch blade he'd carried since his first dig in the Sahara. If this was trouble, he'd go down swinging. The shadow grew larger, and a figure leaned over the edge, a woman, or something like one. Her silhouette was sleek, curves outlined against the pale sky, but her skin shimmered, catching the light in a way no humans ever could. Alien. Alex's pulse kicked up a notch. Zarian, for was supposed to be dead, abandoned for eons, but here she was, staring down at him. "You alive down there, Earthman?" she called, her voice smooth, teasing, with an accent he couldn't place. It hit him like a shot of whiskey, warm, unexpected, and damn intriguing. Barely, he shot back, forcing a grin despite the pain. "You gonna stand there gawking, or help me out?" She laughed, a low, musical sound that echoed in the pit. "Depends. What's a lone human doing poking around my ruins?" "My ruins?" Alex's mind raced. She wasn't just some scavenger. This chick had a claim here. "I'm Dr. Alex Thorne," he said, keeping his tone steady. "Archaeologist. Came to study this place, not die in it." She tilted her head, studying him, and he caught a flash of violet eyes, sharp, piercing, like they could see right through him. Study, huh? You got guts, I'll give you that. Most of your kind don't last a day out here. Before he could reply, she tossed down a rope, the braided cord landing with a thud beside him. Tie it around your waist, she ordered. And don't bleed all over it. I've just cleaned this thing. Alex smirked, impressed by her sass. He looped the rope, gritting his teeth as he stood, his ankles screaming in protest. She pulled, strong and steady, and he braced against the wall, hauling himself up inch by inch. The effort left him panting, sweat stinging his cuts, but he wasn't about to look weak in front of her. Not yet. He reached the top, collapsing onto the cold stone, and got his first good look at her. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with jet black hair that shimmered like oil slicks, shifting colors in the faint light. Her skin gleamed obsidian, smooth and flawless, and her tight outfit, some kind of tactical gear, hugged every curve, leaving little to the imagination. Hot damn, he thought, catching his breath. She was no human, but she was built like a dream. Thanks, he said, sitting up. You got a name? Or do I just call you my guardian angel? Zara, she said, crossing her arms, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. And don't get cute, Thorne. You're not out of the woods yet. She nodded toward the horizon, where storm clouds churned, dark and angry. This place doesn't like intruders. Neither do I. Alex raised an eyebrow, wiping dirt from his face. Guess I'll have to change your mind. What's a girl like you doing guarding a dead planet? Her smirk faded, replaced by something harder. It's not dead, she said. Not to me. And you just stepped into something bigger than your little dig, Earthman. Dr. Alex Thorne lay sprawled on the icy stone of Zirian, chest heaving as he sucked in the thin, frigid air. The rope that had hauled him out of the pit dangled beside him, still swaying from the effort. Above him stood Zara, her obsidian skin catching the faint glow of the ruins like a living shadow. She was a sight, tall, lean, and dangerous, her tactical gear clinging to her like a second skin, showing off curves that could stop a man cold. Her violet eyes locked onto his, sharp and unreadable, sizing him up like he was some artifact she'd just dug up herself. You're heavier than you look, Earthman, she said, her voice smooth as silk but edged with a tease. Thought I'd have to leave you down there. Alex pushed himself up, ignoring the stab of pain in his ankle. Glad you didn't, he shot back, brushing dirt off his jacket. I'd hate to miss meeting the prettiest thing on this rock. He flashed a grin, testing her, and caught a flicker of amusement in her gaze before she rolled her eyes. Flattery won't get you far out here, Thorne, she said, but her lips twitched, hinting at a smile. She stepped closer, offering a hand, and he took it, her grip cool, strong, and steady as she pulled him to his feet. Up close, she smelled faintly of something sweet, like alien flowers mixed with gun oil. Damn, she was trouble, and he was already hooked. All right, Zara, he said, testing her name on his tongue. You got me out of that hole. Now what? You gonna drag me off to some alien jail? Or is this a rescue? She let go of his hand and crossed her arms, the movement pulling her gear tighter across her chest. Alex kept his eyes on her face, mostly. Depends on you, she replied. I don't like strangers snooping around my ruins. You've got 10 seconds to convince me you're not a threat. Her tone was firm, but there was a spark in her eyes, like she was daring him to impress her. Alex straightened, wincing as his ankle protested, but he wasn't about to look weak. I'm no threat, he said, meeting her stare. I'm Dr. Alex Thorne, archaeologist. Been chasing the secrets of places like this for 15 years. Earth, Mars, you name it. I'm here to study these ruins, not steal from them. Those glyphs down there. He jerked a thumb toward the pit. They're older than anything I've seen, and I think they're a map, or maybe a warning. I can figure it out, if you let me. He paused, then added with a smirk. Plus, I'm too stubborn to die easy. You'd have to try harder than a little fall to get rid of me. Zara tilted her head, studying him. Stubborn, huh? That's a human thing, I hear. She stepped back, glancing at the storm clouds rolling in, dark and heavy over the jagged horizon. You're lucky I found you. Most don't survive a night out here. Storms will freeze you solid, or the scavengers will pick you clean. She turned, motioning for him to follow. Come on, my camp's not far. You can explain yourself there, and maybe I won't toss you back in that hole. Alex limped after her, knife still in his pocket, just in case. She moved fast, graceful, like she was born to this terrain, and he had to hustle to keep up. The ruins stretched around them, a labyrinth of crumbled towers and frost-covered arches, glowing faintly with that eerie blue light. Alex's mind buzzed with questions. Who built this? Why'd they abandon it? But he kept his mouth shut, watching Zara instead. She was no ordinary wanderer. The way she scanned the shadows, hand resting near a sleek pistol on her hip, screamed training, maybe military. You said my ruins, he called out, breaking the silence. What's that mean? You some kind of guardian? She didn't slow down, but her shoulders tensed. Something like that, she said over her shoulder. My people have watched this place for generations. It's ours to protect. Protect from what? Alex pressed, catching up despite the ache in his leg. Looks pretty dead to me. Zara stopped short, spinning to face him, and he nearly bumped into her. She was close now, close enough he could see the faint shimmer of her skin, like tiny stars embedded in it. Dead, she said, voice low and sharp. You humans always think you know everything. This place is alive, dangerous, and you're stirring it up. Her eyes flicked to his blood-smeared forehead, then back to his face. You're bleeding all over it, too. Real smart. Alex wiped his brow, chuckling despite the sting. Occupational hazard. But if it's so dangerous, why save me? She hesitated, then shrugged. Call it curiosity. Humans don't come here often. Figured you might be worth keeping alive for now. She turned away again, leading him down a narrow path between two massive stone slabs. The wind picked up, howling through the ruins, and Alex shivered, pulling his jacket tighter. Zara didn't seem to notice the cold, her stride steady as they reached a sheltered overhang, a makeshift camp with a fire pit, a tarp, and a stack of gear. Sit, she ordered, pointing to a flat rock by the fire pit. Alex obeyed, easing himself down, while she knelt and sparked a flame with a small device. The fire flared up, casting a warm glow over her face, softening the hard edges. Thanks, he said, stretching out his bad leg. So what's the deal? You're not just a random badass out here, are you? Zara smirked, tossing a stick into the fire. Badass? Cute word. No, I'm not random. I'm Zara Vex, last of the Sentinels. My job's keeping idiots like you from waking up things that should stay asleep. Alex leaned forward, intrigued. Waking up what? Those glyphs? The ruins? She met his gaze, the firelight dancing in her violet eyes. You'll see, she said cryptically. But first, you're going to tell me everything. Why you're here, what you want. And if I don't like your answers, Earthman, you're on your own. Alex grinned, undeterred. Fair enough. I've got a story worth hearing. Just don't kick me out before the good part. She raised an eyebrow, settling in across from him, and he knew this was going to be one hell of a ride. The fire crackled in Zara's camp, spitting sparks into the dimness of Zirian 4's eternal twilight. Dr. Alex Thorne sat on the flat rock, his ankle throbbing, but his mind racing, locked onto the woman across from him. Zara Vex leaned back against a slab of stone, her violet eyes glinting like twin stars, watching him with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. The heat from the flames danced across her obsidian skin, making it shimmer, and her tight gear hugged her frame in a way that kept pulling Alex's gaze, though he fought to keep it on her face. All right, Earthman, she said, her voice low and challenging. You say you're here to study the ruins. Prove it. Tell me something useful, or this fire's the last comfort you'll get. Alex grinned, leaning forward despite the ache in his leg. He wasn't about to let her call his bluff. He'd spent half his life cracking puzzles older than most cities, and he'd be damned if some alien badass outsmarted him now. You want useful, he said, pulling his battered notebook from his jacket. Those glyphs I saw in the pit, they're not just pretty scribbles. I've seen patterns like them before, on Mars in the Proxima digs. They're a language, and I'm betting they're instructions. Maybe for a weapon, maybe a shield. Give me something to work with, and I'll show you what I can do. Zara's smirk faded, replaced by a flicker of interest. She reached into a pack by her side and pulled out a thin, metallic tablet. Ancient, its surface etched with the same glowing symbols Alex had seen below. "This came up with the scavenger's haul last week," she said, tossing it to him. "No one's cracked it. My people think it's junk, but I don't buy that. If you're as good as you say, figure it out." Alex caught the tablet, his fingers brushing the cool, humming metal. It felt alive, vibrating faintly, and the glyphs pulsed blue under his touch. Jackpot, he thought, his pulse kicking up. This was a shot. He flipped open his notebook, scanning the sketches he'd made in the pit. Rough, smudged, but enough to start. "Okay," he muttered, half to himself. "Let's see what you're hiding." The symbols were sharp, angular, with loops that reminded him of old Sumerian, mixed with something alien, something deeper. He traced a line on the tablet, cross-referencing his notes, and spotted a repeating cluster. 3 slashes, a curve, a dot. "This here," he said, tapping it, "it's a root word. Means power or source in half a dozen dead languages. And this," he pointed to a spiral, "that's motion. Activation, maybe." Zara shifted closer, her knee brushing his as she peered over his shoulder. "Keep going," she said, her breath warm against his ear, sending a jolt down his spine. Alex forced his focus back to the tablet, ignoring the heat creeping up his neck. "Right," he said, clearing his throat. "These aren't random. They're sequenced, like a code. If I'm right, this thing's a key, or part of one. Tells you how to turn something on or off." He flipped the tablet over, revealing a faint grid etched into the back, and his eyes lit up. "Bingo. Coordinates. This point's somewhere in the ruins, a chamber, maybe, or a vault." Zara's hand landed on his arm, firm but not rough, and he glanced up to find her staring at him, wide-eyed. "You're sure?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost impressed. "Damn sure," he replied, grinning. "I don't guess. I know." She pulled back, crossing her arms, but the smirk was back, bigger this time. "Not bad, Thorne. Not bad at all." She stood, pacing by the fire, her boots crunching on the frost. "If you're right, that chamber's trouble. My people sealed it off centuries ago. Said it was cursed, full of tech we couldn't control. Sentinels like me guard the surface, but we don't go down there." Alex tucked the tablet under his arm, standing despite the pain. "Then it's a good thing I'm not one of your people," he said. "I've got no problem stirring up a little trouble if it means answers." "You in?" Zara stopped, turning to face him, and for a moment, the wind howling through the ruins was the only sound. "You're crazy," she said, but there was a spark in her eyes. Admiration, maybe, or something hotter. "Crazy's my specialty," Alex shot back, stepping closer. "And I'm betting you're not the type to back down either." She laughed, sharp and bright, and damn if it didn't hit him like a punch. "You got guts, Earthman. I'll give you that. But if we're doing this, you follow my lead. I know this place, you don't." "Deal," Alex said, offering his hand. She took it, her grip cool and electric, lingering a beat longer than necessary. "Good," she said, letting go. "Rest up. We move at first light. That ankle of yours better hold, or I'm not dragging you again." Alex chuckled, settling back by the fire. "Wouldn't dream of it. So what's in that chamber? Gold? Guns? Alien coffee makers?" Zara snorted, tossing him a canteen. "Drink, and pray it's not something that'll eat us both." He took a swig, water, cold and crisp, and watched her as she checked her gear, her movements quick and precise. She was a warrior, no doubt, but there was more to her, something fierce and alive, like the ruins themselves. Alex flipped through his notebook again, the tablet beside him, piecing together the puzzle. This wasn't just a dig anymore. It was a test, and he'd aced the first round. Whatever waited in that chamber, he'd face it head-on, with Zara by his side, or ahead of him, if she insisted. Either way, he was in deep now, and there was no turning back. The fire popped, and Zara glanced over, catching his stare. "What?" she asked, arching a brow. "Just thinking," Alex said, his voice low. "You and me, we might make a hell of a team." She smirked, turning away, but not before he saw the faintest flush on her cheeks. "Prove it tomorrow, Thorne," she said. "Then we'll talk." Alex leaned back, grinning into the dark. Challenge accepted. The first light of Zirian 4's weak sun barely pierced the storm clouds as Dr. Alex Thorne followed Zara through the ruins, his breath puffing out in frosty clouds. His ankles still ached, but he gritted his teeth and kept pace, the metallic tablet tucked under his arm like a prize. Zara moved like a panther, silent, sure-footed, her black hair shimmering as she navigated the maze of ice and stone. Her gear hugged her curves tighter in the cold, and Alex caught himself staring more than once. "Eyes up, Thorne," she called without turning, her voice sharp but playful. "You know, good to me if you trip again." He smirked, shaking his head. "Just admiring the view," he shot back, and her low laugh echoed off the ancient walls. They reached a towering archway, its surface carved with the same glowing glyphs Alex had deciphered. "This is it," Zara said, running a hand over the stone. "The sealed chamber's down there. Last Sentinel who tried to open it didn't come back." Alex stepped up beside her, squinting at the symbols. "Guess I'm breaking a streak then," he said, pulling out his notebook. "These match the tablet. See the spiral? It's the activation key." He pressed the tablet against a recessed slot in the arch, and the glyphs flared bright blue, a deep rumble shaking the ground. "Here we go," he muttered, stepping back as the stone slid open, revealing a dark tunnel sloping down. Zara drew her pistol, its barrel glinting in the faint light. "Stay close," she ordered, leading the way. Alex followed, his flashlight cutting through the gloom, illuminating walls lined with more carvings, scenes of war, strange machines, and a glowing orb that looked like a power source. "This isn't just a tomb," he said, voice hushed. "It's a bunker or a lab." The air grew warmer as they descended, thick with that metallic tang he'd smelled in the pit. Zara nodded, her eyes scanning every shadow. "My people called it cursed for a reason. Whatever's down here, it's big." The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness, the floor a grid of cracked tiles. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it, a crystalline sphere pulsed with blue-white energy, humming like a heartbeat. "Holy hell!" Alex breathed, stepping forward. "That's the source, has to be." Zara grabbed his arm, her grip tight. "Wait," she hissed. "Look." She pointed to the tiles. Some glowed faintly, others didn't. "It's a trap. Step wrong, and we're toast." Alex's eyes narrowed, flicking to the carvings on the walls. "Not if I can help it," he said, kneeling to study the pattern. He traced the glyphs with his fingers, cross-referencing his notes. "It's a sequence," he said, excitement building. "The tiles match the tablet. 3 slashes curved. Step on those. We're safe." Zara raised an eyebrow, impressed but skeptical. "You sure, Earthman?" she asked, her hand still on his arm, cool against his skin. "Dead sure," he replied, meeting her gaze. "Trust me." She hesitated, then nodded. "Lead on, then. But if you're wrong, I'm haunting you." Alex chuckled, stepping onto the first glowing tile. It held firm, no zap, no collapse. "One down," he said, grinning. They moved together, Alex calling out the pattern, slash, curve, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his brow. Zara stayed close, her shoulder brushing his, her pistol ready. Halfway across, the chamber trembled, dust falling from above. "Keep going," she urged, her voice tight. Alex nodded, focusing hard, until they reached the pedestal. Up close, the sphere was mesmerizing, its lights swirling like a trapped storm. "Beautiful," he said, reaching for it. But as his fingers brushed the crystal, the floor shook harder, and a low growl echoed from the shadows. Zara spun, pistol raised as shapes emerged, mechanical drones spider-like, their eyes glowing red. "Guess we woke something up," she said, firing a shot that sparked off one's hull. Alex grabbed the sphere, yanking it free, and the drones lunged. "Run!" he yelled, clutching the prize as they bolted back across the tiles, Zara covering him with precise blasts. The chamber roared, walls cracking, and Alex's heart pounded. This was no dig anymore. It was survival. Dr. Alex Thorne sprinted across the glowing tiles, the crystalline sphere tucked under his arm like a football, its hum buzzing through his chest. Behind him, Zara Vex fired at the drones, her pistol spitting energy bolts that lit up the crumbling chamber. One spiderbot skittered close, its metal claws slashing, and Alex ducked, feeling the air whip past his head. "Move, Thorne!" Zara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. She nailed the drone with a shot, its legs buckling, but more poured from the shadows. Too many. The floor bucked under them, tiles shattering, and Alex stumbled, pain shooting through his ankle. Zara grabbed his jacket, hauling him up, her strength surprising him. "You're not dying on me yet," she growled, her violet eyes fierce. They reached the tunnel, drones clattering behind, and Alex shoved the sphere into his pack, freeing his hands. "Keep going," he yelled, pulling his knife as a bot lunged. He jammed the blade into its eye, sparks flying, and it screeched, collapsing. Zara glanced back, a flicker of approval crossing her face. "Nice one, Earthman," she said, blasting another. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them single file, and Alex took the rear, slashing at anything that got too close. His lungs burned, but he wasn't about to slow down, not with her counting on him. The archway loomed ahead, daylight filtering through, but the drones were relentless, their whirs and clicks deafening. "We're not going to outrun them," Alex panted, spotting a panel on the wall. More glyphs, glowing faintly. "Cover me," he called, sliding to a stop. Zara spun, firing a barrage, her stance steady as a rock. "Make it quick," she snapped, her hair whipping as she moved. Alex scanned the panel, recognizing the activation sequence from the tablet. "Slash, curve," he muttered, pressing the symbols in order. The arch rumbled, and a slab of stone began to descend, sealing the tunnel. A drone lunged, claws raking his arm, and Alex cursed, shoving it back with a kick. Zara grabbed his shoulder, pulling him clear as the slab slammed shut, crushing the bot with a satisfying crunch. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breathing. Alex slumped against the wall, clutching his bleeding arm, the sphere safe in his pack. Zara holstered her pistol, her chest heaving, and turned to him. "You okay?" she asked, her voice softer now, concern flickering in her eyes. "Been better," he said, managing a grin. "But I'll live." She knelt beside him, inspecting the gash. "Hold still," she said, pulling a small medkit from her gear. Her fingers brushed his skin as she cleaned the wound, cool and gentle, and Alex winced but didn't pull away. "You're tougher than you look," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Most humans would have panicked back there." He met her gaze, her face close enough he could count the tiny stars in her skin. "Takes more than a few tin cans to scare me off," he replied, his voice low. "Besides, I had a good partner." Zara's smile widened, just for a second, before she tied off the bandage. "Partner, huh? Don't get used to it." She stood, offering a hand, and he took it, her grip pulling him up with ease. They stepped out into the ruins, the storm clouds thinning, and Alex felt the weight of the sphere in his pack. "We've got something big here," he said, nodding at it. "This could change everything." Zara glanced at him, her expression unreadable. "Maybe, but it's trouble, too. You ready for that?" He smirked, brushing dirt off his jacket. "Born ready." Dr. Alex Thorne crouched behind a jagged boulder, the crystalline sphere heavy in his pack, its faint hum vibrating against his spine. Beside him, Zara Vex scanned the horizon, her violet eyes narrowed against the swirling snow of Zirian 4. The ruins stretched out around them, a frozen graveyard of stone and ice, but the air crackled with new danger. Above, the low drone of engines cut through the wind, a sleek, black shuttle circling like a vulture. "TerraTech," Zara whispered, her voice tight. "They must have tracked us from the chamber." Alex's jaw clenched. TerraTech, Earth's greediest megacorp, wasn't here for archaeology. They wanted the sphere, and they'd kill to get it. "Guess we stirred the hornet's nest," he said, flashing a grim smile. "Any bright ideas, Sentinel?" Zara's lips twitched, but her focus stayed on the shuttle. "They're not alone," she said, pointing to the ground. A squad of armored troopers fanned out from a landing zone, their rifles glinting, led by a tall figure in a sleek exosuit. Colonel Marcus Holt, TerraTech's enforcer. Alex had crossed paths with Holt years ago, during a dig gone sour in the belt. The man was ruthless, all charm and no soul, and now he was hunting them. "We can't outrun that," Zara said, checking her pistol's charge. "Not with your limp." Alex shot her a look. "I'm fine," he lied, his ankle screaming with every step. "But we need a plan fast." He peeked over the boulder, counting 8 troopers plus Holt. Bad odds, but he'd faced worse. "They're moving in a grid," he said, his archaeologist's brain kicking into gear. "Predictable. These ruins are a maze. Narrow paths, dead ends. We can use that." Zara raised an eyebrow, impressed. "You're not just a nerd with a notebook, are you?" she said, her tone teasing despite the stakes. Alex grinned, pulling out his sketch of the ruins. "Nerd with a plan. There's a choke point half a click east, tight alley, high walls. We lure them in, slow them down." She nodded, her hand brushing his as she leaned over the sketch. "Risky, but I like it. Let's move." They darted through the ruins, sticking to shadows, Zara leading with her sentinel instincts, Alex close behind, ignoring the pain in his leg. The wind howled, masking their footsteps, but the shuttle's engines grew louder, its spotlight sweeping dangerously close. They reached the alley, a narrow gap between 2 towering spires, perfect for an ambush. "Here," Alex said, pointing to a crumbling ledge above. "You take high ground, pick them off. I'll draw them in." Zara grabbed his arm, her grip firm, her eyes fierce. "Don't play hero, Thorne," she said, voice low. "I'm not losing you." The words hit harder than he expected, and he met her gaze, a spark passing between them. "Not going anywhere," he promised. Alex rigged a decoy, his flashlight set to flicker like a signal, and tossed it into the alley's mouth. Then he hid behind a slab, knife ready, heart pounding. Zara scaled the spire with cat-like grace, her silhouette blending into the stone, pistol aimed. The troopers took the bait, Holt's voice barking orders as they funneled in. "Got you," Alex muttered, signaling Zara. She fired, precise shots dropping 2 troopers before they could react. Chaos erupted, shouts, return fire, but the tight space worked against them, just as Alex planned. He lunged from cover, tackling a 3rd trooper, his knife finding a gap in the armor. The man went down, but a rifle slammed into Alex's shoulder, knocking him back. Zara leaped from the ledge, landing on the attacker with a crunch, her pistol finishing the job. "Up!" she yelled, hauling Alex to his feet. They ran, dodging blasts, but Holt's exosuit roared to life, closing the gap. "Thorne!" he bellowed, voice amplified. "Give me the sphere and you walk." Alex laughed, breathless. "Go to hell, Holt." The shuttle swooped low, its spotlight blinding, and Alex knew they were out of time. "This way," Zara hissed, pulling him into a hidden crevice as the alley exploded in gunfire. The crevice was tight, barely wide enough for Dr. Alex Thorne to squeeze through, his pack scraping the stone. Zara pressed against him, her body warm despite the cold, her breath quick and steady. Outside, TerraTech's troopers swept the alley, their boots crunching, Holt's voice barking commands. The sphere in Alex's pack hummed louder, like it knew they were cornered. "Quiet," Zara whispered, her lips brushing his ear, sending a shiver down his spine. He nodded, gripping his knife, ready to fight if they were found. Her hand rested on his chest, calming his racing heart, and for a moment, the danger faded, just him and her, inches apart in the dark. "They're close," she murmured, peeking through a crack. The shuttle's engines roared overhead, its scanners probably hunting for the sphere's energy signature. "We can't stay here," Alex said, his voice low. "That thing's like a beacon." He tapped the pack, thinking fast. His years dodging raiders on fringe worlds had taught him one thing. When you're outgunned, you get creative. "The ruins," he said. "They're full of old tech, right? Maybe we can mask the signal, jam their scanners." Zara's eyes lit up, catching his drift. "There's a relay station nearby," she said. "Ancient, but it might still work." "Good thinking, Earthman." She flashed a smile, quick and bright, and damn if it didn't make him feel 10 feet tall. They slipped out as the troopers moved past, Zara leading through a maze of tunnels she knew like her own skin. Alex followed, his ankle burning but his focus razor-sharp. The relay station was a crumbling dome, half buried in ice, its walls studded with rusted panels. Inside, faint lights flickered, old tech still alive. "Here," Zara said, pointing to a console covered in glyphs. Alex knelt, recognizing the symbols from the tablet. "Same language," he said, hands flying over the controls. "If I can reroute the power, it'll emit a pulse, scramble their gear." Zara kept watch, pistol ready, her silhouette sharp against the doorway. "Hurry," she urged, as the shuttle's drone grew louder. Alex worked fast, sweat beading despite the cold, his fingers tracing the glyphs. "Slash, curve," he muttered, activating the sequence. The console sparked, then hummed, a low pulse vibrating through the dome. Outside, the shuttle wobbled, its lights flickering. "Come," Alex said, grinning. Zara grabbed his shoulder, her touch electric. "Nice work," she said, her voice warm with approval. "Now, let's disappear." They bolted, the pulse covering their escape, weaving through the ruins until they reached a shallow cave, its entrance hidden by frost. Inside, they collapsed, catching their breath. Zara checked his arm, the bandage from earlier stained red. "You're a mess," she said, but her tone was soft, almost tender. She rewrapped the wound, her fingers lingering, and Alex caught her hand, holding it. "Thanks," he said, meeting her gaze. "For keeping me alive." Her lips parted, like she wanted to say something, then she pulled back, a faint flush on her cheeks. "Don't get sappy," she said, but her eyes said different. "We've got a long way to go, and that sphere's going to bring more heat." Alex nodded, feeling the weight of it all, but with her beside him, he was ready for anything. The cave's icy walls glimmered faintly under Dr. Alex Thorne's flashlight, casting soft shadows as he and Zara Vex settled in, their breaths visible in the frigid air of Zirian 4. The crystalline sphere sat in Alex's pack, its hum quieter now, like it was resting after their narrow escape from TerraTech's troopers. Zara knelt by a small heater she'd pulled from her gear, its glow warming the cramped space. Her obsidian skin caught the light, shimmering like a starfield, and her tight tactical gear outlined every curve. Alex had to force himself to look away before she caught him staring. "Warmer yet, Earthman?" she asked, her voice teasing as she adjusted the heater, her violet eyes flicking to his. "Or do you humans always shiver like that?" Alex chuckled, rubbing his hands together, his bandaged arms stinging but manageable. "Takes more than a little cold to slow me down," he said, leaning back against the cave wall. "But I'll take the heat, especially from you." She smirked, shaking her head, but didn't reply, focusing instead on unpacking rations. The silence was comfortable, broken only by the distant howl of the wind outside. For the first time since he'd crashed into that pit, Alex felt safe, or as close to it as you could get on a planet trying to kill you. Zara handed him a foil packet, some kind of protein bar, tasteless but filling. "Eat," she said, settling across from him, her knees almost brushing his. "You're no use to me if you pass out." He took a bite, watching her as she ate, her movements precise, almost ritualistic. "So," he said, swallowing, "you're a Sentinel, last of your kind. What's that like? Guarding a dead planet, all alone." Her eyes darkened, and for a moment, he thought he'd pushed too far. Then she sighed, setting her food down. "Not dead," she said softly. "Zirian 4's alive in ways you can't see. My people, we were tied to it, to the ruins, the energy here. When they died, war's disease, I stayed. It's my duty." Alex nodded, sensing the weight of her words. "Sounds lonely," he said, his voice low. "I get it. I've spent years chasing relics, sleeping in tents, no one but me in the dust. But you," he leaned forward, meeting her gaze. "You're too alive for a ghost town like this." Zara's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through. "Smooth talker," she murmured, but her eyes softened, like she was seeing him for the first time. She shifted closer, her hand resting near his, and the air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken things. "Tell me about Earth," she said suddenly, surprising him. "What's it like, your home?" Alex grinned, seizing the chance to lighten the mood. "Messy," he said. "Crowded cities, bad traffic, but also oceans that stretch forever, music you feel in your bones, food that's better than this." He tapped the protein bar, making her laugh, a bright, unexpected sound that warmed him more than the heater. "We've got stories too," he added. "Old ones, like your ruins. I could tell you a few if you want." Her smile lingered, and she leaned in, her shoulder brushing his. "Maybe later," she said, her voice low, almost intimate. "Right now, I just want to know you're real." Their eyes locked, and Alex felt his pulse kick up, the cave fading away until it was just her. Those eyes, that voice, the heat of her so close. He reached out, his fingers grazing hers, and she didn't pull away. "I'm real," he said, his voice rough. "And I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, they stayed like that, hands touching, the world outside forgotten. Then Zara cleared her throat, pulling back, her cheeks faintly flushed. "Good," she said, standing abruptly. "Rest up, Thorne. Tomorrow, we figure out what to do with that sphere." Alex watched her move to the cave's entrance, his heart still racing. Yeah, this was trouble, and he was all in. Dr. Alex Thorne woke to the faint hum of the crystalline sphere, its glow seeping through his pack in the dim cave. Zara stood at the entrance, silhouetted against Zirian 4's pale dawn, her pistol in hand, scanning for threats. The sight of her, strong, vigilant, her gear hugging her like it was painted on, stirred something in Alex, but he pushed it down. They had bigger problems. TerraTech was still out there, and the sphere was a magnet for trouble. He stood, stretching his sore muscles, and joined her, the cold biting his skin. "Morning," he said, his voice rough from sleep. "Any sign of our friends?" Zara glanced back, her violet eyes sharp but warm. "Not yet," she said, "but they'll come. We need a plan." Alex nodded, pulling the sphere from his pack. It pulsed brighter in his hands, like it sensed their urgency. "This thing's the key," he said, turning it over. The glyphs called it a source, maybe a power core, maybe a weapon. Either way, TerraTech wants it bad. He set it down, grabbing his notebook, its pages filled with sketches and translations. The tablet mentioned a relay network, stations like the one we use to jam their scanners. If we can hook the sphere to one, we might control its power. Zara crouched beside him, her knee brushing his, sending a spark through him. "Control it how?" she asked, her voice skeptical but curious. "Think big," Alex said, his eyes lighting up. "Amplify the pulse we used before. Knock out their tech, ships, weapons, all of it. Level the playing field." He tapped a sketch of the ruins, marking a central hub. "There's a main relay here, deeper in. If we get the sphere there, we could shut TerraTech down for good." Zara studied the map, her fingers grazing his as she traced the path. "That's a long shot," she said, but her tone held respect. "And dangerous. The hub's guarded. Old Sentinel traps, maybe worse." Alex grinned, undeterred. "Danger's my middle name. You in?" She laughed, a low, throaty sound that hit him hard. "You're insane, Thorne," she said, standing. "But yeah, I'm in. We'll need help, though. My contacts, resistance fighters. They're scattered, but I can call them." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Resistance? You've been holding out on me." Zara smirked, holstering her pistol. "You haven't earned all my secrets yet, Earthman." She moved to a comms unit in her gear, sending a coded signal, her fingers flying with precision. Alex watched, impressed. She wasn't just a warrior. She was a leader. The signal sent. They packed up, the cave's warmth fading as they stepped into the frost. "How long till your friends show?" Alex asked, slinging his pack on. "Hours, maybe a day," Zara said, scanning the ruins. "We move now, stay low, avoid TerraTech." They set off, weaving through crumbling arches, the sphere's hum a constant reminder of the stakes. Halfway to the hub, Zara froze, grabbing Alex's arm. "Down," she hissed, pulling him behind a pillar. A patrol drone buzzed overhead, its red eye scanning. They pressed close, her body warm against his, her breath steady despite the danger. "Too close," she whispered, her lips near his ear. Alex nodded, his heart racing, not just from the drone. The drone passed, and they moved again, faster now, the hub's spire visible in the distance. "You're good at this," Alex said, catching his breath. "Keeping us alive." Zara glanced back, a faint smile on her lips. "You're not so bad yourself," she said. "For a human." He chuckled, but her words stuck with him. They were a team now, and whatever lay ahead, they'd face it together. Dr. Alex Thorne crouched low in the frost-covered ruins of Zirian. The crystalline sphere in his pack humming softly, a constant reminder of the stakes. Beside him, Zara Vex checked her comms unit, her violet eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of TerraTech's patrols. The air was thick with tension, the distant rumble of engines a grim warning that Colonel Holt and his troopers weren't far behind. Zara's signal had gone out hours ago, calling her resistance contacts, and now they waited in a crumbling alcove, the wind howling through the ancient stone. "They're late," Alex muttered, his breath clouding in the cold. Zara glanced at him, her obsidian skin shimmering faintly. "They'll come," she said, her voice steady. "They always do. You just keep that sphere safe, Earthman." Alex adjusted the pack, his bandaged arm aching, but his focus sharp. "This thing's our ticket," he said, patting it. "If we get it to the relay hub, we can shut Holt down permanently." Zara nodded, her hand brushing his as she shifted closer, the contact sending a spark through him. "You're betting a lot on that plan," she said, her tone half teasing, half serious. "Hope you're as good as you think." He grinned, meeting her gaze. "Better. Stick with me, and you'll see." Her lips twitched, a flicker of smile, and for a moment, the danger felt far away. A soft whistle broke the silence. 3 short bursts, a signal. Zara tensed, drawing her pistol, but relaxed as figures emerged from the ruins. 4 aliens, clad in mismatched armor, their skin ranging from green scales to pale blue fur. The leader, a broad-shouldered figure with a scar across his face, stepped forward. "Zara," he said, his voice gruff. "Heard your call. This the human." He jerked a thumb at Alex, his yellow eyes skeptical. "Name's Kale," he added. "You'd better be worth the risk." Alex stood, ignoring the ache in his ankle. "Dr. Alex Thorne," he said, offering a hand. "And I'm worth it. Got a plan to take down TerraTech, but I need your help." Kale ignored the handshake, crossing his arms. "Talk," he said. Alex didn't flinch, pulling out his notebook and the sphere. "This is a power source," he explained, holding it up, its glow lighting their faces. "Ancient tech, tied to the ruins relay network. Hook it up to the main hub, and we can send a pulse, fry their ships, weapons, everything." Kale's eyes narrowed. "And why trust you? Humans brought TerraTech here." Zara stepped in, her voice firm. "He's different, Kale. He cracked the glyphs, got us this far. Give him a chance." Alex shot her a grateful look, her faith in him hitting hard. The insurgents murmured, skeptical but listening. Alex laid out the plan, sketching the hub's location in his notebook. "It's guarded," he said. "Traps, maybe drones. But with your firepower and my know-how, we can do this." Kale studied him, then nodded slowly. "All right, human. We're in, but you screw this up, you're dead." Alex smirked. "Fair enough. Let's move." The group set off, weaving through the ruins, Zara at Alex's side, her presence steadying him. "You handled that well," she whispered, her shoulder brushing his. "Told you I'm good," he replied, winking. Her laugh, soft and warm, was worth every risk. They reached the hub's outskirts by dusk, a massive spire looming against the stormy sky. "This is it," Alex said, checking his notes. "We're close." But as they moved forward, Kale raised a fist, signaling a halt. "Trouble," he growled, pointing to tracks in the frost. "TerraTech's troopers, already here." Alex's heart sank, but he tightened his grip on the sphere. "We're not stopping now," he said, voice low. "Let's do this." Dr. Alex Thorne gripped the crystalline sphere, its pulse thrumming through his hands as he crouched at the edge of Zirian 4's relay hub. The spire towered above, its stone walls glowing with ancient glyphs, but the air crackled with danger. TerraTech's troopers patrolled the perimeter, their rifles sweeping the frost. Zara Vex knelt beside him, her pistol ready, her violet eyes locked on the enemy. Behind them, Kale and his insurgents checked their weapons, faces grim. The plan was simple but brutal. Get the sphere to the hub's core, activate the pulse, and cripple TerraTech's tech. Simple didn't mean easy. Ready, Earthman? Zara whispered, her breath warm against his ear, a fleeting comfort in the cold. Alex nodded, his jaw set. Let's end this. Kale signaled, and the insurgents fanned out, silent as shadows. Alex and Zara moved with them, sticking to the ruins cover, the sphere heavy in his pack. The hub's entrance was a massive arch, guarded by 2 troopers and a turret drone. We need a distraction, Alex said, scanning the area. He spotted a loose stone panel, its glyphs faintly active. There, he pointed. I can trigger it, draw them off. Zara grabbed his arm, her grip tight. Careful, she said, her voice low, urgent. I need you in one piece. Her concern hit him like a spark, and he squeezed her hand. I've got this, he promised, slipping toward the panel. Alex knelt, his fingers tracing the glyphs, slash, curve, just like the tablet. He pressed the sequence, and the panel flared, a loud hum echoing. The troopers spun, shouting, and the drone whirred toward the noise. Go! Kale hissed, leading a charge. The insurgents opened fire, bolts lighting up the dark, dropping 1 trooper instantly. Zara pulled Alex forward, her pistol blazing, and they sprinted for the arch, dodging return fire. A blast grazed Alex's shoulder, searing pain, but he pushed through, the sphere's hum urging him on. Inside, the hub was a cavernous maze, its walls pulsing with blue light, lined with ancient consoles. Cores deeper, Zara said, leading the way, her movements fluid, deadly. Kale's team split off, engaging more troopers flooding in from side tunnels. Alex stayed with Zara, his flashlight cutting through the gloom, revealing carvings of a war long past. Machines, orbs, destruction. This place was built to fight, he muttered, his archaeologist's brain piecing it together. The sphere's their weapon. Zara nodded, her eyes fierce. Then let's use it. They reached the core, a vast chamber, its center dominated by a glowing pedestal, perfect for the sphere. But Colonel Holt was there, his exosuit gleaming, flanked by elite guards. Thorne, he sneered, voice amplified. Hand it over or die. Alex stepped forward, the sphere in his hands, its light blinding. You want it? He said, voice steady. Come get it. Holt laughed, raising a massive cannon, but Zara fired first, her shot sparking off his armor. Now, she yelled, and Alex dove for the pedestal, slamming the sphere into place. The chamber roared to life, glyphs blazing, a deep pulse shaking the floor. Holt's guard charged, but Alex grabbed a fallen rifle, firing wildly, his aim more grit than skill. Zara fought like a storm, her pistol dropping 2 guards, her movements a blur. Kale's team burst in, turning the fight into chaos. Bolts, shouts, metal clanging. Alex worked the console, his fingers flying over glyphs, recalling the tablet's code. Almost there, he shouted, as a guard tackled him, pinning him down. Pain exploded in his ribs, but Zara was there, yanking the guard off, her knife flashing. Stay with me, she growled, pulling him up. The sphere pulsed faster, energy crackling, and Alex punched in the final sequence. Got it, he yelled, as a shockwave erupted, a blinding wave of blue light. Troopers' rifles sparked and died. Holt's exosuit froze, and the shuttle outside crashed with a distant boom. The pulse worked. TerraTech's tech was toast. Holt roared, lunging manually, but Kale tackled him, insurgents swarming. Alex slumped against the console, panting, Zara at his side. We did it, he gasped, meeting her gaze. She smiled, fierce and proud, her hand on his shoulder. Yeah, we did. The chamber quieted, the sphere's hum fading, victory hard won. But Alex knew the fight wasn't over yet. The relay hub's core chamber was silent now, its glowing glyphs dimmed, the crystalline sphere still humming faintly on its pedestal. Dr. Alex Thorne leaned against a cracked console, his body aching, bruised ribs, a burned shoulder, and a gash on his arm that throbbed with every heartbeat. Around him, the ruins of Zirian, stood quiet, the storm outside fading to a low moan. Zara Vex stood nearby, wiping blood from her knife, her obsidian skin streaked with dust but still shimmering under the faint light. Her violet eyes met his, fierce yet soft, and Alex felt a rush stronger than the battle they'd just won. "You look like hell, Earthman," she said, a half-smile tugging at her lips. "But you pulled it off." Alex chuckled, wincing as pain shot through his side. "We pulled it off," he corrected, pushing off the console to stand straighter. "Couldn't have done it without you, or Kale's crew." The insurgents were scattered around the chamber, tending wounds or securing Colonel Holt, who knelt in cuffs, his exosuit dead after the sphere's pulse. Kale approached, his scarred face grim but approving. "You weren't lying, human," he said, clapping Alex's shoulder, hard enough to make him grit his teeth. "That pulse took out their whole operation. Ship's down, comms fried. TerraTech is done here. For now," Zara added, her voice cautious. She sheathed her knife, stepping closer to Alex, her gear still hugging her curves in a way that made it hard to focus. "Holt's bosses won't quit. They'll send more." Alex nodded, glancing at the sphere. "Then we keep this out of their hands," he said. "Figure out what it really does. Weapon, shield, whatever. It's our edge." Kale grunted, crossing his arms. "You're staying, then? Thought humans like you run back to Earth after the fight." Alex looked at Zara, her presence grounding him, and felt something shift inside. "Not this time," he said, his voice firm. "Zirian 4's got too many secrets left. I'm not done digging." Zara's smile widened, just a fraction, and she bumped his shoulder lightly. "Good," she said, her tone warm, "'cause I'd hate to break in a new partner." The word partner hit him like a spark, and he grinned, ignoring the pain. "Wouldn't dream of leaving you hanging, Sentinel." They moved outside, the insurgents hauling Holt to a makeshift holding area. The ruins stretched around them, ancient and enduring, their glow softer now, like they approved of the victory. Alex sat on a fallen pillar, Zara joining him, their thighs brushing as they shared a canteen of water. "You ever think about what's next?" he asked, passing it back. "After all this?" She took a sip, her eyes distant. "Never had time," she said. "Being a Sentinel, it's duty, not dreams. But now," she glanced at him, her gaze softening. "Maybe I'm starting to see something else." Alex's heart kicked up, and he leaned closer, his voice low. "Yeah? Like what?" Her lips parted, but before she could answer, Kale called them over. "Got a problem," he said, pointing to a cracked tablet one of his men had found on Holt. Its screen flickered, showing a TerraTech logo and a countdown. 48 hours. "Reinforcements," Kale growled. "They're coming, and they'll be pissed." Alex's stomach sank, but he squared his shoulders. "Then we get ready," he said. "Use the ruins, the sphere, whatever we've got." Zara nodded, her hand brushing his, lingering just long enough to feel personal. "Together," she said, and he knew she meant more than the fight. As the insurgents planned defenses, Alex and Zara stayed by the pillar, the weight of the battle settling in. "You scared?" she asked suddenly, her voice quiet. He met her eyes, honest. "Yeah, but I'm more scared of letting you down." She smiled, real and unguarded, and squeezed his hand. "You won't," she said. The moment stretched, heavy with promise, and Alex knew, whatever came next, they'd face it side by side. Dr. Alex Thorne stood atop a crumbling spire, overlooking the vast ruins of Zirian. 4. The crystalline sphere now secured in a makeshift vault below. The air was clearer today. The storm clouds parted to reveal a pale, alien sky. Zara Vex stood beside him, her obsidian skin catching the light, her tactical gear scuffed but still form-fitting, a reminder of the warrior she was. The insurgents had fortified the hub, preparing for TerraTech's inevitable return. But for now, there was a fragile peace. Alex's wounds were healing, his arm bandaged, his ribs sore but manageable. Zara's presence, steady and warm, made the pain feel distant. Nice view, he said, glancing at her with a grin. And I don't just mean the ruins. She rolled her eyes, but her smile was real, lighting up her violet eyes. Keep dreaming, Earthman, she teased, nudging his shoulder. You've got work to do before you get to play. Alex laughed, the sound echoing across the stone. Work was right. The sphere's secrets were only half unlocked, its glyphs hinting at a network of ancient relays across the planet. If he could crack it, they'd have a weapon to keep TerraTech at bay, maybe even rebuild Zirian for. I'm thinking, he said, pulling out his notebook, its pages worn but precious. We map the relays, activate them one by one. Could turn this place into a fortress. Zara nodded, impressed. You don't quit, do you? She said, her voice soft with admiration. That's why I like you. The words hung between them, and Alex turned to her, his heart racing. Like me, huh? He said, stepping closer, his voice low. Care to elaborate? Zara held his gaze, unflinching, her lips curving. You're stubborn, she said. Smart, brave, and not bad to look at for a human. She reached out, her fingers brushing his jaw, cool and electric, and Alex caught her hand, holding it there. You're not so bad yourself, he murmured, leaning in. Their lips were inches apart when Kale's shout broke the moment. Incoming signal. And they pulled back, both flushed but smiling. Down at the hub, Kale showed them the cracked tablet, now displaying a grainy message from TerraTech's fleet. They're pulling back, Kale said, surprised. Your pulse scared them off for now. Alex exhaled, relief mixing with caution. Gives us time, he said. To rebuild, prepare. Zara nodded, her hand finding his, squeezing briefly. We'll need it, she said, but we've got a shot. The insurgents cheered, a rare moment of hope, and Alex felt it too, a future taking shape, not just for the planet but for him and Zara. They spent the day planning, Alex sketching relay locations while Zara coordinated with Kale's team. By dusk, they stole a moment alone, sitting on a ledge overlooking the ruins. You could go back to Earth, she said, her voice quiet. You've done enough. Alex shook his head, taking her hand. I'm staying, he said. With you. This place, these secrets, it's home now. Her eyes softened, and she leaned against him, her warmth grounding him. Good, she whispered, 'cause I'm not letting you go. As the stars emerged, Alex knew. Whatever came next, they'd build it together. Dr. Alex Thorne stood on a high spire overlooking Zirian. The ruins below glowing softly under a rare clear sky. Months had passed since the battle at the relay hub, and the planet felt alive again. New relay stations hummed, powered by the crystalline sphere, their pulses keeping TerraTech's fleets at bay. Alex's notebook, now worn to tatters, held maps of the ruins, each page a step toward rebuilding. He'd become a leader here, his human ingenuity blending with Sentinel wisdom to forge a new future. Beside him, Zara Vex leaned against the stone, her obsidian skin shimmering, her violet eyes warm as they met his. Not bad for an Earthman, she teased, her voice soft, her gears still hugging her curves like a second skin. Alex grinned, slipping an arm around her waist, pulling her close. Couldn't have done it without my Sentinel, he said, his voice low, rough with feeling. She didn't pull away, resting her head against his shoulder, her touch grounding him. Together, they'd turned Zirian, into a beacon of hope, a sanctuary for insurgents and survivors. Kale's resistance had grown, new allies arriving daily, drawn by stories of the human who cracked the ruined secrets. You're staying for good, then? Zara asked, her fingers brushing his. Alex nodded, his gaze on the horizon. This is home now. With you. The stars above twinkled, a reminder of Earth, but Alex's heart was here, tied to Zara and the planet they'd saved. The sphere's power was theirs to protect, its mysteries still unfolding, and he'd spend his life unraveling them, side by side with her. We got work to do, she said, smiling, her hand squeezing his. Ready, partner? He kissed her forehead, soft and sure. Always. As they turned to join the others, the ruins pulsed brighter, like they approved, and Alex knew Humanity's spark had lit anew.